I'm Melissa, 29, a marketing executive in Boston with the corner office I always dreamed of. My younger sister Amber was always the wild child, while I was the responsible one our parents counted on. When I met Ryan 3 years ago, I thought I'd finally found my perfect match. We were engaged, planning our future, until my world imploded with a single text message. Nothing prepared me for the betrayal that followed, or the gold-embossed wedding invitation that arrived months later, inviting me to watch my sister marry the man who was supposed to be my husband. Before I tell you how my perfect life shattered overnight, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe if you want more stories about family betrayal that will make your jaw drop. I was never the girl who dreamed about her wedding day. While other little girls were planning fairytale ceremonies, I was organizing my school supplies and setting goals. By 26, I had climbed the corporate ladder at Boston's top marketing firm, while my friends were still figuring out their career paths. Dating took a backseat to my ambitions, which meant a string of failed relationships with men who couldn't understand why I wouldn't drop everything for a spontaneous weekend away, when I had a major presentation on Monday. That all changed the night I met Ryan Matthews at the annual technology conference my firm was hosting. I was running the event, clipboard in hand, putting out fires and ensuring everything ran smoothly. Ryan was the architect whose firm had recently completed the renovation of our office building. He was there as a guest of my boss. "You must be Melissa," he said, approaching me during a brief moment of calm. "I've heard you're the one who actually runs this place." I looked up to find myself staring into the most captivating blue eyes I'd ever seen. Ryan was tall with dark hair that fell perfectly across his forehead, a strong jawline, and a smile that made me forget my own name for a moment. "Depends who's asking," I replied, recovering quickly. "Some might say I'm just really good at making other people look good." He laughed, and something about the sound made me want to hear it again. "I'm Ryan Matthews. I designed the nightmare renovation everyone's been complaining about." "Well, Ryan Matthews, I'm one of the few who actually loves what you did with the place. Especially the rooftop garden. It's my sanctuary when deadlines are crushing me." From that moment, conversation flowed effortlessly. For the first time in years, I found myself distracted from work responsibilities. When the event ended, Ryan asked for my number, and I broke my rule about never dating clients or business associates. Our first date was dinner at a small Italian restaurant tucked away in the North End. Ryan had made reservations and somehow scored the best table in the house. Over candlelight and wine, we discovered our shared love of old bookstores, historical architecture, and the same obscure indie band. When he walked me to my door that night, his goodnight kiss was perfect, respectful, but with enough passion to leave me thinking about it for days. What followed was the most authentic relationship I'd ever experienced. Ryan wasn't intimidated by my success or my ambition. He celebrated my promotions and understood when I needed to work late. He listened when I talked about my day and remembered details about my colleagues that even I sometimes forgot. I did the same for him, learning about the intricacies of architectural design and the politics of city planning boards. After a year together, we moved into his brownstone in Beacon Hill. I loved waking up next to him every morning, sharing coffee on the small balcony overlooking the historic neighborhood. For the first time in my life, I found myself thinking that maybe having it all wasn't just about career success. On our second anniversary, Ryan surprised me with a weekend trip to Cape Cod. We stayed at a charming bed and breakfast with views of the ocean. On our second evening, as the sun was setting in brilliant oranges and pinks across the water, Ryan got down on one knee on the beach. "Melissa," he said, looking up at me with those blue eyes that still made my heart skip, "you're the most incredible woman I've ever known. You're brilliant, driven, compassionate, and somehow you still have room in your life for me. I want to build a life with you, support your dreams, and create new ones together. Will you marry me? The ring was stunning, a vintage sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds on a platinum band. He had remembered a passing comment I'd made months earlier about loving my grandmother's sapphire ring. Yes, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Absolutely yes. We spent the next few months in a haze of happiness, planning our future together. We agreed on a spring wedding the following year, at a historic mansion in the Berkshires. We started a shared spreadsheet for the guest list and debated good-naturedly about band versus DJ. Ryan wanted a honeymoon in Japan. I was lobbying for Italy. These were the kind of disagreements that made me smile even as we had them. 6 months into our engagement, it was time for Ryan to meet my family. My parents lived in Connecticut, a 2-hour drive from Boston. My younger sister Amber had recently moved back home after another failed attempt at finding herself in Los Angeles. Amber and I couldn't be more different. Where I was structured and goal-oriented, Amber was spontaneous and free-spirited. I had straight A's and scholarships. She had dropped out of 3 colleges. Our parents had spent years bailing her out of financial disasters and broken relationships. They're going to love you, I assured Ryan as we drove to my parents' home for Sunday dinner. Just be prepared for my mom to immediately start planning the wedding, and for my dad to interrogate you about your financial planning. And your sister? Ryan asked. Amber. I laughed. She'll probably show up late, if at all. She's between jobs again and living in the basement. We're not exactly close. I couldn't have been more wrong about that day. My parents did love Ryan, just as I predicted. My father was impressed by Ryan's career success and knowledge of investment properties. My mother immediately started showing him family photo albums and discussing flower arrangements. What I didn't expect was Amber's reaction. She wasn't late, in fact, she was waiting when we arrived, dressed more conservatively than I'd seen her in years. Her usual edgy style had been replaced by a sundress that could have come from my own closet. Her typically wild curls were smoothed into a sleek ponytail. The moment Ryan walked through the door, Amber's eyes locked onto him. I noticed it immediately, the way her body language shifted, how she laughed a little too loudly at his jokes, touched his arm when speaking to him. At one point, she mentioned having similar taste in music when Ryan talked about a concert we'd attended. Oh, I love them too. I saw them in LA last year, she gushed, though I distinctly remembered her mocking me for listening to boring indie crap in the past. During dinner, Amber positioned herself directly across from Ryan, asking him questions about his work and his interests. I tried to redirect conversation several times, but she persistently turned it back to him. So, Ryan, she said, twirling pasta around her fork while maintaining eye contact with him, Melissa says you designed that amazing new building downtown. You must be so talented. It was a team effort, Ryan replied modestly, squeezing my hand under the table. Your sister's been incredibly supportive through some challenging projects. That's our Melissa, Amber said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Always the perfect one. Something about her tone made me uncomfortable, but I dismissed it. This was Amber being Amber, always competing, always trying to provoke me. I wasn't going to let her antics ruin this important day. As we drove home that night, Ryan commented, your sister's not what I expected from your descriptions. She seems to have herself together. That's a new development, I replied. Trust me, it won't last. She's probably just trying to impress you because you're new. Well, your whole family is great, Ryan said, squeezing my knee. I'm looking forward to becoming part of it. I leaned over and kissed his cheek, pushing away the nagging discomfort I'd felt watching Amber with him. Ryan and I were solid. Nothing could come between us, especially not my flighty, irresponsible sister, who never stuck with anything for more than a few months. How wrong I was. The changes were subtle at first. So subtle that I convinced myself I was imagining things. Ryan started working later than usual, coming home after I'd already gone to bed. When I asked about his day, his answers became vague, missing the details he used to share enthusiastically. Just the usual client meetings, he'd say, shrugging as he poured himself a whiskey. Nothing interesting. The physical distance grew too. The man who used to pull me into his lap, while I was trying to cook dinner, now barely kissed me goodbye in the mornings. The passionate intimacy that had been a cornerstone of our relationship faded to occasional, perfunctory encounters that left me feeling more alone than satisfied. 3 months after Ryan met my family, he cancelled our weekend trip to Vermont. We'd been planning to visit a bed and breakfast to finalize it as our wedding accommodations for out-of-town guests. Something came up with the Patterson project, he explained, not quite meeting my eyes. The client wants revisions by Monday, and I need the whole weekend to get them done. I could come with you to the office, I offered. Work on wedding plans while you handle the revisions. Then we could at least have dinner together. No, he said, too quickly. I mean, I'll be completely absorbed. I wouldn't be good company anyway. You should stay home, get some rest. I agreed, telling myself that this was normal. Relationships went through phases. We were both busy professionals. The wedding planning was adding stress. This would pass. But the following week, I found myself staring at Ryan's phone when it lit up on the coffee table while he was in the shower. A text notification from A showed on the screen. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same place. My heart pounded as I debated whether to look. I'd never been the jealous type who checked partners' phones. Ryan and I had always trusted each other completely. But something felt wrong. I picked up the phone, but it was locked with a passcode, a new development I hadn't noticed until that moment. When Ryan emerged from the bathroom, I asked casually, "When did you start locking your phone?" He froze momentarily before continuing to towel his hair. "Oh, new company policy. Client confidentiality and all that." "Makes sense," I said, watching his face carefully. "Someone named just texted you. Said they can't wait to see you tomorrow." Ryan's expression flickered with something I couldn't identify before settling into a casual smile. "Probably Andrew from the office. We have a site visit tomorrow." I nodded, pretending to accept this explanation, but the knot in my stomach tightened. Ryan had never mentioned an Andrew at work. I would have remembered. I prided myself on keeping track of the people important to him. The next evening, Ryan texted that he'd be working late again. I decided to surprise him with dinner at his office. I picked up food from his favorite Thai restaurant and took an Uber downtown. But when I arrived at his firm, the receptionist looked confused. "Ryan Matthews." He left around 5 with the rest of the team. Said something about being done for the day. I mumbled something about mixed signals and left, food in hand, humiliation burning in my chest. Standing on the sidewalk outside his building, I called him. The call went straight to voicemail. I texted, "Wanted to surprise you at the office, but they said you'd left. Everything okay?" 20 minutes later, he replied, "Sorry, had to meet a contractor at a site. Reception must be bad here. Don't wait up, this might take a while." The lie stung more than the cancelled plans. Ryan and I had built our relationship on honesty and respect. Now he was lying about his whereabouts, and I couldn't understand why. A week later, I was doing laundry when I noticed a faint, unfamiliar scent on Ryan's dress shirt, a floral perfume I didn't wear. I brought the fabric to my nose and inhaled again. Definitely perfume, definitely not mine. I'm a Chanel No. 5 loyalist. This was something sweeter, more youthful. That night, I confronted him. Ryan, is there something going on that I should know about? He looked up from his laptop, his expression guarded. What do you mean? You're distant. You're working late constantly. Your shirts smell like someone else's perfume. My voice cracked on the last word. Ryan's face hardened in a way I'd never seen before. Are you accusing me of cheating on you? After everything we've built together? I'm asking you to talk to me, I said. Something's changed, and I deserve to know what it is. Nothing's changed except your paranoia, he snapped. I'm under enormous pressure at work, and instead of supporting me, you're throwing accusations. The conversation devolved from there, with Ryan turning my concerns back on me, suggesting I was being needy and insecure. He stormed out, saying he needed space, and didn't return until the following evening. When he did, he acted as if nothing had happened, bringing home flowers and suggesting we order in. I accepted the peace offering, but the seed of doubt had been planted. I started paying closer attention. Ryan had become protective of his phone, taking it with him even to the bathroom. He was constantly texting someone when he thought I wasn't looking. He'd set up a new password on his laptop. Then came the call from my friend Danielle. Mel, I don't know how to say this, she began, her voice hesitant. But I saw Ryan yesterday, at Café Lucia. He was with a woman. They looked intimate. My heart sank. What did she look like? Younger, maybe mid-20s. Curly blonde hair. They were holding hands across the table, and at one point he kissed her. The description hit me like a physical blow. Curly blonde hair. Mid-20s. My mind immediately went to Amber, but I pushed the thought away. Even Amber wouldn't betray me like that. It had to be someone else. Did you confront him? Danielle asked. Not yet, I replied. I need proof first. That night, while Ryan was in the shower, I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked his phone records online through our shared account. For the past 2 months, there was a recurring number he called or texted almost daily. Sometimes multiple times a day. A number with my hometown's area code. With shaking hands, I dialed the number from my work phone. Hello. The voice that answered was instantly recognizable. Amber. I hung up immediately, bile rising in my throat. My sister and my fiancé. The two people I should have been able to trust most in the world. The evidence was mounting, but I still needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to know for sure before I confronted them. The next day, I told Ryan I had a business trip and would be gone overnight. Instead, I rented a car and drove to my parents' town, parking down the street from the house where Amber now had her own apartment in the converted garage. I waited for 3 hours before a familiar car pulled into the driveway. Ryan's silver Audi. I watched, numb with shock, as he got out carrying an overnight bag and flowers. He looked around furtively before hurrying to Amber's door. She opened it immediately, throwing her arms around his neck and kissing him deeply. In that moment, my entire world collapsed. I sat frozen in my rental car, unable to process what I'd just witnessed. Ryan and Amber. My fiancé and my sister. The betrayal was so profound, so unthinkable, that my brain struggled to accept the reality before my eyes. After several minutes of watching them through the window, laughing, touching, behaving like lovers, I finally found the strength to move. My body felt detached from my mind as I walked up the driveway, each step requiring enormous effort. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I would say. I just knew I couldn't drive away without confronting them. I knocked on Amber's door, 3 sharp raps that seemed to echo in my ears. The laughter inside immediately ceased. Footsteps approached cautiously. The door opened a crack, and Amber's face appeared, her expression shifting from annoyance to shock when she saw me. "Melissa." Her voice was small, almost childlike. "What are you doing here?" "Invite me in, Amber," I said, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. She hesitated, looking over her shoulder. "Now's not really a good time." I pushed the door open wider, forcing my way past her. And there was Ryan, standing in my sister's kitchenette, holding a glass of wine. The flowers he'd brought were already arranged in a vase on the counter. His overnight bag was open on her bed, clothes partially unpacked. "Melissa," he said, his face draining of color. "I can explain." "Please do," I replied, a strange calm settling over me. "Explain how my fiancé is in my sister's apartment with an overnight bag when he told me he was working late." They exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them that made my stomach turn. They already had the intimacy of an established couple, the kind that Ryan and I had developed over years together. "It just happened," Amber said finally, moving to stand beside Ryan. He didn't step away from her. "We didn't mean to hurt you." "It just happened," I repeated. "What just happened, exactly?" "Did you just happen to sleep with my fiancé, Amber? Did you just happen to betray your own sister?" Ryan set down his wine glass. "Melissa, you need to calm down. This isn't what you think." "Then what is it, Ryan?" My voice rose despite my efforts to contain it. "Because it looks like you're having an affair with my sister. It looks like you've been lying to me for months." "We fell in love," he said simply, as if those 4 words could justify everything. The room seemed to tilt sideways. "Love? You don't even know her." "I know her better than you think," Ryan replied, his tone suddenly cold. "In fact, I know her better than I ever knew you." "What is that supposed to mean?" Ryan glanced at Amber again before continuing. "Amber and I connect on a level that you and I never did. She's spontaneous, passionate. With you, everything is always so planned, so controlled." Each word was a knife twisting in my chest. I turned to Amber. "And you? What's your excuse?" Amber at least had the decency to look ashamed, but her words belied any real remorse. "I didn't go looking for this, Mel. But when true love comes along, you can't fight it. You can't stop it just because it's inconvenient." "Inconvenient?" I laughed, a harsh sound that didn't sound like me. "You think that's what this is? An inconvenience? You're sleeping with the man I was going to marry." "I think I chose the wrong sister from the beginning," Ryan said quietly. "Amber and I are more compatible. We want the same things." The casual cruelty of his comparison stunned me into silence. This man who had held me through my father's heart attack, who had celebrated every professional achievement with me, who had promised to love me forever, he was now coldly comparing me to my sister and finding me lacking. "How long?" I finally managed to ask. "How long has this been going on?" They exchanged another look. "Since the day he came to meet your family," Amber admitted. "We exchanged numbers that night. It started with just texting, but then 6 months. They'd been betraying me for 6 months, almost the entirety of my engagement. Every late night at work, every business trip, every time he was too tired to talk, he was with her. My sister. I was going to tell you," Ryan said. "After things settled at work. I didn't want to hurt you." "Don't," I held up my hand. "Don't pretend you cared about hurting me while you were sleeping with my sister behind my back." Melissa, Amber stepped toward me, reaching out. We can work through this. As a family. I backed away from her touch as if it were poison. We are not a family. We're nothing. Tears streamed down my face as I turned to leave. At the door, I paused and removed my engagement ring, the sapphire that had once symbolized our future together. I placed it on the small table by the entrance. I hope you're both very happy together, I said, not looking at either of them. You deserve each other. I walked out, closing the door quietly behind me. The drive back to Boston passed in a blur. I don't remember stopping for gas, or navigating the highway. I only remember pulling over twice, when sobs overtook me so completely that I couldn't see the road through my tears. By the time I reached Ryan's, brownstone, I felt hollowed out. I packed essentials in a daze: clothes, toiletries, important documents. I left my key on the kitchen counter with a note that said simply, "I'll send for the rest of my things." I checked into a hotel, a generic chain with no memories attached to it. Sitting on the edge of the stiff bed, I finally allowed myself to fall apart completely. The pain was physical, a crushing weight on my chest that made it difficult to breathe. I called in sick to work the next day, and the day after that. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep without nightmares. I couldn't stop replaying every moment of my relationship with Ryan, searching for signs I had missed. Friends tried to reach me. My phone buzzed constantly with texts and calls from Danielle, from co-workers, from my father. I ignored them all. I couldn't bear to say the words out loud: "My fiancé left me for my sister." The humiliation was too great. When I finally returned to work a week later, I was a ghost of myself. I went through the motions, attended meetings, responded to emails, but I felt nothing. Colleagues whispered when I passed. Everyone knew something had happened, but no one dared to ask directly. At night, I returned to my sterile hotel room and stared at the ceiling, wondering how my life had imploded so spectacularly. I had always been the responsible one, the planner, the achiever. I had done everything right. And somehow, I had still ended up here, alone, betrayed by the two people who should have loved me most. My mother called repeatedly. When I finally answered, her first words were, "You need to forgive your sister." I hung up without responding. My father was different. "What they did is unforgivable," he said when I finally spoke to him. "I've told them both. Amber's choices have disappointed me before, but this. I never thought she could do something so cruel." His support should have been comforting, but it only underscored the fractured state of our family. My mother choosing Amber. My father choosing me. The divide was just one more casualty of their betrayal. After 3 weeks in the hotel, Danielle convinced me to move into her spare room. "Just until you find a new place," she insisted. "You can't keep living in a hotel." I agreed, not because I wanted to, but because I had no fight left in me. My life had become about simply surviving each day, putting one foot in front of the other, breathing in and out when all I wanted was to disappear. I should have known the worst was yet to come. For 3 months, I existed rather than lived. I moved through my days on autopilot, focusing exclusively on work, because it was the only area of my life I could still control. I found an apartment, a sterile 1-bedroom with white walls I didn't bother to decorate. I declined social invitations and avoided dating apps. The thought of trusting anyone again seemed impossible. Then, on a rainy Tuesday in November, I checked my mail to find a thick cream envelope with elaborate calligraphy. My name and address were handwritten in gold ink. The paper was expensive, the kind with visible texture that feels substantial between your fingers. I knew what it was before I opened it. Some part of me had been expecting this, the final twist of the knife. Inside was an embossed wedding invitation. Amber Marie Wilson and Ryan James Matthews request the honor of your presence as they join their lives in matrimony. The wedding was set for Valentine's Day, exactly 1 month after what would have been our wedding date. They were getting married at the same historic mansion in the Berkshires that Ryan and I had booked. They were using our venue, our date, our dream. My hands shook so violently that the invitation fell to the floor. I followed it down, collapsing onto the cold tile of my entryway, gasping for breath that wouldn't come. The panic attack gripped me for what felt like hours, though it was probably only minutes. When I could finally move again, I noticed something else had fallen from the envelope, a handwritten note on personalized stationery. Melissa, I know this might be difficult, but it would mean the world to us if you could attend. Despite everything, you're still my sister, and Ryan still cares for you deeply. We want you there to support our happiness. Family should stick together, no matter what. Mom agrees that your presence would help heal our family. Please don't let pride keep you away. Love always. Amber. The audacity was stunning. The casual cruelty took my breath away all over again. They wanted me to attend their wedding. To watch them exchange vows a month after I should have been the one in white. To support their happiness built on the ruins of mine. I tore the invitation and note into tiny pieces, then burned them in my kitchen sink. Watching the flames consume the expensive paper brought the first real satisfaction I'd felt in months. The next day, my mother called. Amber tells me you received the invitation, she said without preamble. I think you should go. Are you serious? I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. You actually expect me to attend my sister's wedding to my ex-fiancé? I know it's difficult, sweetie, but family has to come first. Amber is still your sister. Nothing will change that. She changed it when she slept with Ryan behind my back for 6 months. My mother sighed, the sound heavy with disappointment. People make mistakes, Melissa. Holding on to anger only hurts you. This wedding is happening whether you attend or not. Wouldn't it be better to show that you're the bigger person? The bigger person, I repeated flatly. So not only should I forgive them, I should celebrate them. Validate what they did. It would mean so much to Amber, my mother pressed. And to me. I can't bear to see my family torn apart like this. Amber and Ryan tore this family apart, not me, I said. I won't discuss this further. I hung up, but the calls continued. My mother. Amber. Even distant relatives, who had heard what happened and wanted to help mediate. Each conversation left me feeling more gaslighted, more isolated in my completely reasonable response to betrayal. Danielle and my other close friends were appropriately outraged on my behalf. They've got some nerve, Danielle fumed when I told her about the invitation. I'd go just to object dramatically when the minister asks if anyone has reason these two shouldn't marry. Yes, because the groom was engaged to the bride's sister when they started sleeping together. Her suggestion made me laugh for the first time in months, but I had no intention of attending the wedding. I planned to spend that day as far from the Berkshires as possible, preferably on another continent. Or, my friend Rachel suggested over wine, you could show up looking absolutely stunning, with a gorgeous date on your arm, and show them exactly what they lost. The best revenge is living well, agreed Lisa, my college roommate, who had flown in specifically to support me through this latest indignity. Their revenge fantasies were entertaining but didn't appeal to me. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. I wanted to stop feeling this constant ache in my chest. I wanted to stop seeing Ryan and Amber together in my dreams. But the pressure to attend the wedding intensified as the date approached. My mother called daily. Extended family members I barely spoke to sent messages urging reconciliation. Even my father, who had been firmly on my side, began to waver. "I'm not saying what they did was right," he said during one of our weekly calls. "It was despicable. But your mother is beside herself with this family rift. Her blood pressure is through the roof. The doctor says the stress isn't good for her heart." The emotional manipulation was obvious, but effective. My mother had had minor heart issues in the past. The thought of being responsible for worsening her condition was unbearable. What exactly would attending accomplish? I asked, rubbing my temples where a headache was forming. Besides making Mom feel better, and giving Amber and Ryan the audience they apparently want. Closure, maybe, my father suggested. A chance to show yourself and everyone else that they didn't break you. Closure. The word echoed in my mind long after our conversation ended. Did I need to witness their union to finally close this painful chapter of my life? Would seeing them together, officially, help me accept the reality and move forward? I didn't know. But the constant pressure was wearing me down. Maybe attending would at least stop the daily calls and guilt trips. Maybe it would help my mother's health. Maybe it would allow me to finally put this all behind me. With great reluctance, I called my mother and told her I would attend the wedding. Her relief was palpable. "You're doing the right thing, sweetie," she gushed. "This will be the first step toward healing our family." I doubted that very much, but I had made my decision. If I was going to attend this farce of a wedding, however, I would do it on my terms. I would not slink in like a wounded animal. I would not give Amber and Ryan the satisfaction of seeing me diminished. I scheduled a hair appointment at Boston's most exclusive salon. I spent more than I could afford on a dress, a sleek midnight blue sheath that highlighted my figure without being inappropriate for a wedding. I booked a makeup artist who promised to give me a confident, radiant look. The night before the wedding, I lay awake in my bed, rehearsing how I would behave. I would be polite but distant. I would congratulate them briefly and then avoid them for the remainder of the event. I would not drink too much. I would not cry. I would leave immediately after dinner, citing an early meeting the next day. I had a plan. I was in control. I would get through this with my dignity intact. But as dawn broke on Valentine's Day, doubt crept in. Could I really watch my sister marry the man I had loved? Could I stand by silently, as they pledged themselves to each other in the venue that should have been mine? Could I stomach the pitying glances from guests who knew our history? As I prepared for the day ahead, applying my makeup with shaking hands, I honestly didn't know if I had the strength to follow through. But I was determined to try. For my mother's health. For my own closure. For the chance to finally move beyond this betrayal that had consumed me for too long. What I didn't know then was that the day would unfold in ways none of us could have predicted. The careful script I had prepared would be abandoned. The controlled facade I had planned would crumble. And the consequences would reverberate through all our lives for years to come. The morning of Valentine's Day dawned clear and cold, sunlight reflecting blindingly off fresh snow. It was exactly the weather Ryan and I had hoped for when we'd booked the venue for January. A pristine winter wonderland backdrop for our perfect day. As I stared at my reflection in the hotel mirror, adjusting the elegant updo the stylist had created, I second-guessed my decision to attend for the 100th time. My face looked thinner than it had been a year ago, the stress of recent months evident in the sharpness of my cheekbones and the faint shadows beneath my eyes that even expert makeup couldn't fully conceal. But there was something else there too, a hardness that hadn't existed before, a protective shell I'd developed out of necessity. "You can do this," I told my reflection. 6 hours. That's all you need to get through. The historic Berkshire mansion was even more beautiful than I remembered from when Ryan and I had toured it. Snow dusted the grounds like powdered sugar, and fairy lights twinkled in the bare branches of ancient trees. A red carpet extended from the circular driveway to the grand entrance, an addition I hadn't planned for my own wedding. I arrived deliberately late, slipping into the back row of the ceremony space, just as the string quartet began playing. The room was packed with guests, many of whom I recognized, mutual friends, family members, even some of my colleagues. The knowledge that Amber and Ryan had invited people from my professional life stung unexpectedly. As I slid into a seat, the older woman beside me did a double take. "Melissa," she whispered, her eyes wide with recognition. "Aunt Judith, my mother's sister. I didn't think you'd actually come." "Mom insisted," I replied quietly, my eyes fixed straight ahead. "Well, it's very brave of you," she said, patting my hand awkwardly. I nodded but didn't respond. The music changed, signaling the start of the procession. I watched as Ryan's groomsmen filed in, followed by Ryan himself, handsome in a black tuxedo that I'd helped him select months ago for our wedding. His best man was his brother Mark, who caught my eye and quickly looked away, his discomfort evident. At least someone had the decency to feel ashamed. The bridesmaids came next, in flowing gowns of pale pink, the color Amber had once mocked when I mentioned it for my own bridal party. So basic, she had called it. Now here she was, with 6 women dressed exactly as I had envisioned for my day. When the bridal march began and everyone stood, I forced myself to my feet. Amber appeared at the back of the aisle on our father's arm. Her dress was strikingly similar to the one I had chosen, a fitted lace bodice with a flowing tulle skirt. My father's face was rigid as he escorted her, his eyes never meeting mine as they passed my row. I remained standing as they proceeded, my knees locked to keep from collapsing. The room seemed to blur around me, voices becoming distant as though I were underwater. I was watching my life, the life that should have been mine, play out before me with my sister in the leading role. As they reached the altar and my father placed Amber's hand in Ryan's, I saw them exchange a smile so intimate that it physically hurt to witness. I sank back into my seat, focusing on my breathing. In, out. In, out. Just get through this. The ceremony proceeded with excruciating slowness. The minister spoke of love and commitment, of honoring and cherishing. Each word felt like a mockery of what Ryan and Amber had done to me. I stared at my hands, clenched tightly in my lap, the indentation on my ring finger still faintly visible where my engagement ring had been. Then came the moment I had been dreading. If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The traditional words hung in the air. A heavy silence fell over the gathered guests. I felt dozens of eyes turn toward me, waiting, wondering. Would the jilted sister make a scene? My heart pounded so loudly I was certain everyone could hear it. This was my moment, my only chance to speak the truth before all these witnesses. My mind raced with all the things I could say, all the pain and betrayal I could finally give voice to. I stood. The collective gasp was audible. Amber's face drained of color. Ryan's jaw tightened. My mother half rose from her seat at the front, her expression panicked. "I have something to say," I said, my voice stronger and clearer than I had expected. "Melissa," the minister began uncertainly, "perhaps this isn't the..." "No, I think this is exactly the time," I continued, stepping into the aisle. "Before these two pledge their lives to each other, everyone here should know exactly what kind of people they're celebrating today." The room was so silent you could hear the snow falling outside. Every face was turned toward me, expressions ranging from horrified to eagerly curious. 6 months ago, my sister began sleeping with my fiancé behind my back, I said calmly. While I was planning our wedding, in this venue, with these flowers, Ryan was betraying me with Amber. They lied to me for months. They broke not just my heart, but our entire family. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Many guests looked uncomfortable, some looked away, but no one interrupted me. What many of you don't know, I continued, my eyes moving from face to face, is that this isn't the first time Ryan has cheated. After we broke up, I did some investigating. He cheated on his girlfriend before me. He cheated on 2 others before her. I turned to look directly at Amber. He will cheat on you too, Amber. It's who he is. And when he does, I hope you remember this moment. I hope you remember that you sacrificed your sister for a man who will never be faithful to anyone. Ryan stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. That's enough, Melissa. You're embarrassing yourself. No, Ryan. For the first time in months, I'm not embarrassed. I'm just telling the truth. Something you've never been very good at. I turned back to the stunned guests. I came here today because my mother emotionally blackmailed me into attending. She said family comes first. But family doesn't betray family. Family doesn't steal and lie and then expect forgiveness without remorse. My eyes found Ryan's parents in the front row. His mother was crying, his father looking at his son with undisguised disappointment. Mr. and Mrs. Matthews, I'm sorry you raised a son who thinks it's acceptable to treat women this way. I'm sorry that instead of being your daughter-in-law, as we had planned, I'm now just another woman your son has discarded. I straightened my shoulders and took a deep breath. I wish I could say I hope you'll both be very happy together. But the truth is, people who begin a relationship with betrayal rarely find lasting happiness. What you did to me, you'll eventually do to each other. With those final words, I turned and walked down the aisle, head held high. The weight that had been crushing me for months seemed to lift with each step. By the time I reached the doors, I felt lighter than I had since the day I discovered their betrayal. Behind me, chaos erupted. Voices raised in argument, chairs scraping as people stood. I caught snippets as I walked out, Amber sobbing, Ryan's raised voice, my mother calling my name. None of it mattered anymore. I had said my piece. I had reclaimed my story. For the first time since finding Ryan at Amber's apartment, I had taken control instead of being a victim of their choices. Outside, the winter air was sharp and clean in my lungs. I walked to my car, the snow crunching beneath my heels. As I drove away from the mansion, I didn't look back. Whatever happened in that room after I left, whether they continued with the ceremony or called it off, whether guests stayed or left in disgust, was no longer my concern. I had objected. I had spoken my truth. And in doing so, I had finally begun to free myself from the pain they had caused. The immediate aftermath of my objection was digital chaos. Before I'd even reached the highway, my phone exploded with notifications. Texts, calls, social media alerts, all buzzing and chiming in a symphony of reaction. I switched my phone to airplane mode and focused on driving, determined to reach the sanctuary of my apartment before dealing with any of it. By the time I arrived home and finally checked my messages, the story had spread like wildfire. Wedding guests had shared the drama across every platform. Videos of my speech, apparently someone had been recording the ceremony, were being shared in private messages. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out to offer support, or simply to rubberneck at the spectacle. Among the barrage were multiple missed calls from my mother, 3 voicemails from Amber, which I deleted without listening. And a single text from Ryan, "You've always been selfish. Today proved it." I laughed out loud at his audacity, before blocking his number permanently. The most surprising message came from Ryan's sister, Caroline. "Melissa, I know we haven't spoken since everything happened, but I want you to know I admire what you did today. Ryan deserved every word. What you may not know is that he's done this before, not just the cheating you mentioned, but this exact pattern. He leaves women for their friends or sisters. It's like a sick game to him. Our parents are devastated, both by his behavior and by the public spectacle. I'm sorry for not reaching out sooner. I should have warned you when I saw how he was with Amber at family gatherings. Her message stunned me. This wasn't just Ryan's pattern of infidelity, it was a specific type of betrayal he repeatedly sought out. The revelation should have made me feel vindicated, but instead, it just made me sad. Sad for all the women he had hurt, sad for his family, even sad for Amber, who would inevitably become another of his discarded conquests. I replied to Caroline, thanking her for her honesty and suggesting we meet for coffee sometime. It would be good to maintain at least one connection to the life I'd thought I was building with Ryan. The next day, my boss Jennifer called me into her office. I braced myself for reprimand. Several of my colleagues had attended the wedding at Ryan's invitation, and I feared my public meltdown might have professional consequences. Instead, Jennifer closed the door and said, I heard what happened. Those colleagues who were there told me everything. I want you to know that I think you showed incredible courage. I blinked in surprise. You're not concerned about how it reflects on the company. Melissa, you stood up against betrayal in a dignified, articulate way. You didn't scream, or throw things, or make wild accusations. You spoke your truth calmly and with evidence to back it up. If anything, it shows the kind of backbone we value in our leadership team. She smiled. Which is why I want to formally offer you the promotion we've been discussing. Senior Director of Marketing Strategy. The position is yours if you want it. The job offer felt like the universe's way of balancing the scales. While my personal life had imploded, my professional life was soaring. I accepted on the spot, grateful for something positive to focus on. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into work, using the new position as both distraction and healing. The added responsibilities and challenges kept my mind occupied during the day. At night, I finally started attending the therapy sessions my friends had been encouraging for months. Dr. Levine, a compassionate woman in her 50s, helped me process not just the betrayal, but the aftermath of my public objection. Do you regret it? She asked during one session. Speaking up at the wedding. I considered the question carefully. No, I finally answered. I regret that it came to that point. I regret that I wasn't strong enough to enforce my boundaries earlier. But I don't regret finally standing up for myself. That's significant progress, she noted. Recognizing that your response was valid while also seeing how you might avoid similar situations in the future. Through these sessions, I began to understand how my pattern of being the responsible one had created a dynamic where I put others' needs before my own. I had allowed my mother to manipulate me into attending the wedding against my better judgment. I had ignored the red flags in Ryan's behavior because I was so committed to our perfect future. I had even tolerated Amber's competitive behavior throughout our lives because it was easier than confrontation. No more. I was learning to set boundaries, to prioritize my own well-being, to recognize when someone was taking advantage of my natural tendency to accommodate others. About a month after the wedding, my father requested to meet for lunch. We hadn't spoken much since the ceremony. His single text afterward had simply read, "I'm proud of you." We met at a quiet restaurant halfway between Boston and Connecticut. He looked older, the events of recent months evident in the new lines around his eyes. "How are you, Dad?" I asked after we ordered. "I should be asking you that," he replied. "You're the one who's been through hell." "I'm okay. Better than I expected, actually." He nodded, studying his water glass. Your mother and I are separating. The statement hung between us, unexpected, but somehow not surprising. Because of what happened at the wedding? I asked. Because of everything, he sighed. Her reaction to Amber's betrayal was the final straw. She not only condoned it, but pressured you to participate in that farce of a wedding. I can't be with someone whose moral compass is so broken. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I'm sorry, Dad. I never wanted to cause problems between you two. You didn't cause anything, he said firmly. Amber and your mother made their choices. And now I'm making mine. He paused. I've always been proud of you, Melissa. But never more than when you stood up in that church and spoke your truth. It took tremendous courage. His words meant more than he could know. For so long, I had felt like the villain in this story, the bitter ex, the jealous sister, the family troublemaker. Hearing my father affirm that I had been wronged, that my response was justified, helped heal a wound I hadn't realized was still so raw. 2 weeks later, I received another unexpected call from Amber. Against my better judgment, I answered. What do you want, Amber? Her voice was small, subdued. Ryan left me. I closed my eyes, feeling a complex mixture of emotions, vindication, pity, even a perverse sense of justice. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, not entirely truthfully. You were right, she continued, a catch in her voice. He was cheating. With his assistant. Apparently, it started before our wedding. Before their wedding. While he was still actively betraying me with Amber, he had already moved on to his next conquest. The pattern Caroline had described was playing out exactly as she'd predicted. What do you want from me, Amber? I asked again. Sympathy. Forgiveness. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe just to tell you that you were right. And that I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I destroyed our relationship for a man who never actually loved either of us. Her apology felt genuine but insufficient. The damage she had done couldn't be erased with a single phone call prompted by her own heartbreak. I appreciate you saying that, I replied carefully. But I'm not ready to forgive you. Maybe someday, but not now. I understand, she said quietly. For what it's worth, I admire what you did at the wedding. It took guts. I wish I had half your strength. After we hung up, I sat with the conversation, trying to process how I felt. There was no satisfaction in Amber's pain, no joy in being proven right about Ryan. There was only a sad recognition that some wounds leave permanent scars, even when they eventually heal. In the following months, I gradually rebuilt my life. The promotion came with a substantial raise, allowing me to move to a larger apartment in a neighborhood I loved. I started dating again, cautiously at first, then with growing confidence as I met James, a kind, honest man who showed me what a healthy relationship could be. James was everything Ryan wasn't: transparent, consistent, respectful of boundaries. When I told him about my past, about the betrayal and the wedding objection, he didn't run or judge. Instead, he said, "Thank you for trusting me with that story. It couldn't have been easy to stand up for yourself that way." As winter turned to spring and then summer, the scandal faded from social media and workplace gossip. My therapy sessions became less frequent as I developed healthier coping mechanisms and a stronger sense of self. I reconnected with friends I had neglected during my relationship with Ryan and made new ones through a hiking group James introduced me to. One afternoon, nearly a year after the wedding that wasn't, I received a large envelope in the mail. Inside was a formal letter from my mother, the first communication since her angry voicemail after the wedding. "Dear Melissa," it began. Your father and I have finalized our divorce. The process has given me time to reflect on my role in the events of the past year. I realize now that in trying to keep peace in the family at all costs, I enabled Amber's worst behaviors and failed to stand up for you when you needed me most. A mother should protect her children from harm, not push them toward it. I understand if you cannot forgive me, but I want you to know that I recognize my failures and am truly sorry for the pain I caused. The letter continued, explaining that she had entered therapy herself, and was working to understand why she had consistently favored Amber and her needs over mine. She ended by saying she would respect whatever boundaries I needed, but hoped that someday we might rebuild some kind of relationship. I folded the letter carefully and put it away, not yet ready to respond, but grateful for the acknowledgement. Healing family relationships would take time, if it happened at all. For now, I was focused on nurturing the healthy connections in my life and continuing my own growth. Ryan and Amber had both attempted to re-enter my life in various ways, Ryan through mutual friends, suggesting meetings to clear the air, and Amber through increasingly desperate attempts at reconciliation. I maintained my distance from both, recognizing that their presence in my life would only reopen wounds that were finally beginning to heal. The wedding that should have been mine had become the catalyst for rebuilding my life on stronger, more authentic foundations. The objection that had seemed so scandalous in the moment had become the first step toward reclaiming my power. The betrayal that had nearly broken me had ultimately set me free from relationships that diminished rather than enhanced my life. Sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most necessary beginnings. 6 months after Amber's wedding, I barely recognized my own life, in the best possible way. The promotion to senior director had transformed my professional identity. I now led a team of 12 talented marketers, managed our largest client relationships, and had been featured in Industry Insider magazine as one of 30 marketing executives reshaping the field. My new apartment in Back Bay felt truly mine in a way the space I'd shared with Ryan never had. Modern furniture in shades of teal and copper. Art I'd selected. Plants thriving on every windowsill. No compromises, no deferring to someone else's taste. Just my own preferences brought to life. Most significantly, my relationship with James had evolved from casual dating to something meaningful and grounded. Unlike the whirlwind romance with Ryan, this connection had developed gradually, built on consistent actions rather than grand gestures. James was a landscape architect who approached relationships with the same thoughtful patience he applied to his designs. Good things take time to grow, he often said. Rush them, and they won't have strong roots. On a crisp October morning, I was preparing for a major presentation when my phone rang with a familiar number, my father. Dad, can I call you back? I'm just heading into a meeting. Of course, he said. But I wanted you to hear this from me first. Amber and Ryan are officially divorced. I paused, my presentation materials forgotten. Already? It's been less than a year. 6 months and 23 days, to be exact, my father replied, a hint of grim satisfaction in his voice. Apparently, Ryan's infidelities continued. Multiple women. Amber finally had enough when she found texts from yet another conquest, her maid of honor, of all people. The information shouldn't have affected me, but I felt a strange hollowness in my chest. Not pain exactly, but a phantom echo of it. Are you okay? My father asked. Yes, I said, realizing it was true. It's just confirmation of everything we already knew about him. Indeed. The man leaves a trail of destruction wherever he goes. My father hesitated. Amber's back home. Living in the basement again. She's not doing well. I absorbed this information silently. The pattern was so familiar, Amber creating chaos, retreating to our parents when consequences arrived, starting the cycle again. Dad, I need to ask you something, I said carefully. Are you telling me this because you want me to reach out to her? He sighed. I wouldn't presume to tell you what to do, Melissa. What she did was unforgivable. I just thought you should know. After we hung up, I sat at my desk, thoughts swirling. The news should have felt vindicating, the ultimate, I told you so moment. Instead, I felt only a complicated sadness for everyone involved, for Amber, who had sacrificed her sister for a man who betrayed her in the same way. For my parents, whose marriage had collapsed under the weight of our family's dysfunction, even for Ryan, whose pattern of betrayal suggested a profound emptiness I couldn't begin to understand. That evening, I shared the news with James as we prepared dinner together in my kitchen. How do you feel about it? He asked, his attention fully on me despite the vegetables he was chopping. Honestly, less than I expected to, I admitted. It's like confirmation that I was right about Ryan all along, but being right doesn't fix anything. James nodded. Vindication isn't the same as healing. Exactly. I leaned against the counter. The strangest part is that I keep thinking about Amber. After everything she did, I still hate the thought of her suffering. That's because you're a good person, Mel, James said simply. Having compassion for someone who hurt you doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. His words stayed with me over the following days as I contemplated whether to reach out to Amber. In the end, I decided on a middle path. I sent her a brief text. Dad told me about the divorce. I'm sorry you're going through this. Take care of yourself. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was an acknowledgement. A small opening in a door I had firmly closed. Her response came hours later, thank you. That means more than you know. We didn't communicate further, but something inside me loosened, a knot of resentment beginning to unravel. Not for her sake, but for mine. Carrying anger, no matter how justified, had become a weight I was ready to set down. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected visit at my office. My assistant buzzed to inform me that my mother was in the reception area. My mother? I repeated, stunned. We hadn't spoken directly since the wedding, our only communication being the letter she'd sent. Should I tell her you're in a meeting? My assistant asked, sensing my hesitation. I took a deep breath. No. Send her in. My mother looked older, frailer than I remembered. Her usually perfect hair showed strands of gray, she had previously colored religiously. Her confident posture was diminished, shoulders slightly hunched as if carrying an invisible burden. Melissa, she said, standing awkwardly just inside my office door. Thank you for seeing me. What brings you to Boston, Mom? I asked, gesturing for her to sit. She settled into the chair across from my desk, hands fidgeting with her purse. I came to see Amber's therapist. She recommended a family session. I raised an eyebrow. Family therapy? Yes. Amber's been doing intensive work. Part of her recovery involves making amends. She looked down. The therapist suggested that healing might be possible if we all participated in some sessions together. The request was so unexpected that I almost laughed. After everything that had happened, my mother was still trying to orchestrate a family reconciliation on Amber's timeline. Mom, I said carefully, I appreciate that Amber is getting help. That's a positive step. But I'm not ready to sit in a therapy room with her and pretend we're one big happy family working through a minor disagreement. What happened wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a profound betrayal by both her and Ryan. My mother nodded, her eyes filling with tears. I know. And I was part of it too, pressuring you to attend that wedding. Enabling her behavior as I always have. She looked up, meeting my gaze directly. That's actually why I'm here. Not just for Amber's therapy, but for my own amends. I failed you, Melissa. I've always failed you by expecting you to be the strong one, the one who forgives, the one who accommodates. It wasn't fair, and I'm deeply sorry. Her words, the apology I had needed for so long, caught me off guard. For once, she wasn't defending Amber or minimizing what had happened. She was acknowledging her role in the dynamic that had allowed the betrayal to occur. I don't expect forgiveness, she continued. I just wanted you to know that I recognize what I did wrong. Your father was right to leave me. I enabled patterns that destroyed our family. I felt my carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. This vulnerable, self-aware woman was almost unrecognizable as the mother who had manipulated me into attending Amber's wedding. I appreciate you saying that, I said finally. I'm not ready for family therapy, but maybe we could try lunch sometime. Just the two of us. The relief on her face was immediate and profound. I'd like that very much. As she left, I realized that my mother's visit represented something significant, not just her growth, but a shift in the family dynamic. For perhaps the first time, she had approached me on my terms, respecting my boundaries instead of pushing past them. That night, I met Caroline, Ryan's sister, for our now regular monthly dinner. Over the past year, we had developed an unexpected friendship, bonded initially by our shared experience with Ryan's betrayal, but sustained by genuine connection. So, she said after we ordered, I heard about the divorce finalization. News travels fast, I observed. Ryan's latest conquest is already moved in with him, Caroline said, rolling her eyes. Some bartender he met 2 months ago. Our parents are beside themselves. And how do you feel about it? I asked. She considered the question. Sad. Frustrated. At some point, you have to stop being surprised by someone's behavior and accept that this is who they are. Ryan will never change, because he doesn't see anything wrong with what he does. In his mind, he's just following his heart. His heart seems to have a very short attention span, I remarked, which made her laugh. The worst part, Caroline continued, is that I'm pretty sure he believes his own lies. He's convinced himself each time that this new woman is the one until the next one comes along. Her insight struck me as profoundly true. Ryan wasn't calculating in his betrayals, he was pathologically incapable of commitment, always chasing the excitement of new conquest, the validation of being wanted. Understanding this didn't excuse his behavior, but it helped me see that his actions reflected his brokenness, not my worth. As winter approached, bringing with it the anniversary of what would have been my wedding day, James suggested a weekend away. Let's create new memories, he said. Somewhere you've never been with anyone else. We drove to a secluded cabin in Vermont, surrounded by snow-covered pines. No agenda, no expectations, just hiking in the pristine wilderness, cooking meals together, talking for hours by the fireplace. On our last evening, as we watched the sunset paint the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold, James took my hand. I want you to know something, he said. I'm in love with you, Melissa. I have been for months. But I also understand that you've been through a lot, and I'm in no rush. We can move at whatever pace feels right to you. His words, and the respectful way he delivered them, brought tears to my eyes. This was what love should feel like, patient, kind, considerate of my needs rather than focused on his own. I love you too, I replied, realizing I had never said those words with such certainty before. With Ryan, there had always been a performative quality to our relationship, saying and doing the things that looked right on paper. With James, everything felt authentic, grounded in reality rather than fantasy. As we drove back to Boston the next day, I reflected on the journey of the past 18 months. The betrayal that had seemed like the end of my world had actually been the beginning of a better one built on genuine connections, healthier boundaries, and a deeper understanding of myself. At 30, I had experienced a kind of pain I wouldn't wish on anyone. But I had also discovered a strength I never knew I possessed, the courage to stand up for myself, to speak truth even when it was difficult, to walk away from relationships that diminished rather than enhanced my life. The wedding where I objected wasn't the end of my story, it was the beginning of my real life, where I finally understood that loving myself enough to walk away was the greatest gift I could have given myself. Looking back, I now see that objecting at that wedding wasn't just about exposing Ryan and Amber's betrayal to the assembled guests. It was about objecting to a lifetime of accommodating others at my own expense. Objecting to relationships built on lies. Objecting to being cast as the villain in a story where I was actually the victim. That objection set me free, not just from Ryan and Amber, but from patterns that had limited me for years. And in that freedom, I found a path to genuine happiness that no betrayal could ever take away. If you've ever stood up for yourself when it would have been easier to stay silent, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with someone who might need to hear that sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your worth is never determined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to treat yourself.